Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. We are buzzing as always. Super pumped to have another Canadian on the show today. It's been a while since we've had a Canadian, and this one's going to be an absolute banger with one of my favorite companies all time in the crypto space as well. Some of the OGs who literally built the foundation that we stand on today. Guys, I got to talk about the weather. I hate to be this, that guy who starts. I know it's so cliche, but for anyone who's in North America right now, more specifically the Northeast, oh my goodness. I don't know if you guys have looked at the weather the next week. This episode's going to air on Thursday the 22nd. Literally for the whole next week up until about Jan 30. We're looking at like -20, -25 every single day. So stay inside, get used to being on that treadmill or elliptical or bike or whatever you got to do. But it's going to be a shitty 10-day stretch ahead. But let's get into this. Super pumped to have Jesse Knutson on the show today, head of operations at Bitfinex Securities, a regulated security token platform offering issuers and traders access to capital and tokenized securities. He started his career in TradFi, working at global investment banks like Barclays and Macquarie. In addition to his role as Taiwan head of equity capital solutions, he was a founding member of Macquarie's digital asset working group and was the deal lead on the firm's equity investment into the Bitcoin mining space. Prior to joining Bitfinex, he was the VP of Financial Products at Blockstream, where he worked on developing and distributing financial products built on Bitcoin, backed by Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. Banger of a bio. Can't wait to get into this, Jesse. Great to meet you and great to have you on. How you doing this evening for you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, over in Taiwan here, the weather looks a little bit better. So, yeah, sorry to hear that.
Oh, it's a battle, but I'm sure you don't miss that. But then again, you said you're from the west coast of Canada, Victoria, Vancouver. You guys don't get hit as hard as we do. You just don't see the sun for like 3 months and it rains. That's it.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, and then if there's any bit of snow, it just shuts down the city. So, yeah.
I love that. I always love the first drive of the year. We had this probably, I want to say 6 weeks ago in Toronto. I mean, it snows and like we shut down the city. It's like, guys, we do this every year. It hasn't been that long. It's been 365 days, not even. It's been 300 days. Why are we shutting everything down again? But c'est la vie. We'll figure it out one day. Okay, let's jump into it here. You got a pretty wild past in the best way of wild, but I want to get right in. I want to get right into tokenization and the big news that dropped yesterday. Folks, are recording on Jan 20. On Monday, Jan 19th, Martin Luther King Day, we had the New York Stock Exchange news going 24/7. There's rumors that it's being built on Chainlink. I didn't look too deeply into any of that stuff. I'm sure you heard about the news. How wild is that? Everyone always thought, oh, it might be on Hyperliquid, it might be on Solana. This was more for NASDAQ. I never even heard of the New York Stock Exchange even thinking about this, and they're beating the NASDAQ to it. You're big in the tokenization space, Jesse. How big is this for just equities and public stocks as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's a big move for sure, but I think it's definitely part of a broader trend. So I think for us, we've been working at this for a long time. The Bitfinex Securities business was first set up and established in 2021. I've been looking at and thinking about tokenized securities since the ICO boom. I mean, 2017, 2018. So I think for us, it's, kind of a validation of this thesis that we had many, many years ago, and to see this idea of taking the technology behind Bitcoin and digital assets and bringing it to capital markets, becoming consensus. So I think it's really exciting.
It's pretty crazy. Just for the folks at home who aren't too familiar with this, maybe if you could just give them a little TLDR, Cole's notes, Spark notes on how exactly this works. I get asked this all the time, Jesse. How can you possibly tokenize equities? Walk us through the workflow, the process, matching it one-to-one. How does this whole thing go down?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different approaches. It starts with the regulatory framework. So we're in 2 jurisdictions. So I think we're kind of taking a different approach than a lot of other tokenization businesses, and certainly than what the NYSE is doing. So, how Tether got big was kind of attacking the market from the outside in, right? So Tether got really big in emerging markets, Latin America, in Southeast Asia. And I think our approach is similar for securities. So we're regulated in 2 jurisdictions that I think are probably up and coming. So we're in the AIFC, which is a financial center in Astana, Kazakhstan, like Dubai or like ADGM in Abu Dhabi. And we're also in El Salvador. So we have the first license that was given out in El Salvador, license 0001. And obviously, so both of these places, what they have in common is that they have, relatively small traditional capital markets, but they get the technology, right? So they're looking to leverage this technology to grow capital markets. And I think that the approach that they've taken is kind of differently, but they've ended up in the same place. So in the AIFC, they say, okay, it doesn't matter if it's a conventional security or if it's a tokenized security, they're all securities, and they just apply the same regulations apply across the board.
Mm.
In El Salvador, their approach is that if it uses digital asset technology, even if it looks like a security, it's not quite a security, it's something different. It falls within this regulatory framework that they set up in, I guess, 2023. So, but I mean, both the concepts are the same. It's just taking the technology behind Bitcoin or digital assets and just applying it to capital markets so that you get, all the benefits that we're familiar with as people who trade Bitcoin and
Yeah.
digital assets. You get real-time settlement. You can trade it, 24/7,
Yeah.
365. And most importantly, I think is, this is a little bit different than I think what a lot of the big players in TradFi are doing, and probably what the NYSE is doing is we think the definition of tokenization is that you can pull tokens off the platform, right? That you can self-custody them, you can move them to other exchanges for arbitrage, and you can trade them peer-to-peer. So the easy thing for a platform to do is to not allow that, right? And I think tokenized securities have actually been around for quite a while. So if you remember before FTX blew up, they had tokenized US equities, but you couldn't take them off the platform. They were just kind of there and they just traded on normal
Yep.
trading hours. So what we want to do is we want to like open all of that up. And I think that's what investors want too. Like if you talk to anyone at a hedge fund or a portfolio manager, they want to trade stuff 24/7, 365, like all the stuff that we've kind of gotten used to in the digital asset industry. That's what people want.
Yeah, well said there. A little off topic, but I do think about my friends in TradFi who I have a bunch of buddies who are investment bankers. They work their
Yeah,
tails off. They
for
do.
sure.
I know people sort of shit on investment bankers, but they work their absolute bags off. I'm talking, 8 in the morning to 8 at night. And there's some weeks where they're pulling legit 16-hour shifts for 2, 3 weeks in a row. And then they'll sort of get that little bit of time off to break, reset. And they get paid very handsomely for it. They make an absolute bag. But with that being said, what's going to happen to the investment bankers who are already working this hard and this long? Like, what's going to happen to the traditional sort of bankers,
It's
the folks in
it's all
TradFi? Are
gonna
they going to?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I think the big trend that's been playing out for the last couple of years is like if you look back like 10 years ago, it's kind of like a Venn diagram, like the two circles were almost completely separate, right? Like the type of assets that were traded were different, the people that were trading them were
yeah,
different, the technology, the
yeah,
rules, the investment appetite, like the theses, everything was different. Everything's starting to merge now, and that really got accelerated with the approval of the Bitcoin ETFs. And once those went off and Wall Street saw how massively successful those projects are, everybody's looking for what the second thing is. Like, what's the follow-up to that?
yeah,
So I think some people
yeah,
thought, okay, well, we could just do ETFs for like Ethereum, Solana, we could go down the list. None of those were that successful. And I think then people thought, okay, well, then we can do like multi-blockchain bags, and tokenize those, do like a kind of like big bag of everything ETF. I don't think those were that successful as well. And then they kind of started looking at stable coins. I kind of think that they missed the important part of stable coins. I think a lot of the investment banks thought that if they could add yield, that would be the killer feature. I don't think that's the
yes,
killer feature. I
yeah.
think the freedom is the killer
I
feature,
agree.
right? And
Yep.
then now they're looking at tokenization. So I think, like I said, because I think the benefits to investors and to users are so obvious, like real-time settlement, 24/7, 365 trading, like the ability to move your assets from one platform to another for arbitrage, all of that stuff, like the use cases are so obvious. I think now they're looking at tokenization as kind of the next thing.
Yeah, I agree there. Great point on the stable coins as well. Everyone, I mean, Brian Armstrong is going to war with the gov and the regulators
Yeah,
right now for literally one aspect and one aspect only, and that's what you discussed, it's yield. Now I get why Coinbase wants that yield. They pretty much own, I want to say, what is it, half of USDC, half of Circle,
yeah,
whatever it is. But with stable coins, it is freedom. You're right. If I want to go visit you in Taiwan and I want to bring, a gazillion dollars with me, not that I have a gazillion dollars, but I can't bring that in cash.
yeah.
It'd take, 18 suitcases, or I can just walk around with a USB stick and boom, I could bring $1 billion, see you in a second. And that's obviously a nuanced black swan example, but that's powerful. It is. The freedom of stablecoins is really where it's at.
Well, if you're in like, any country around like most of the countries around the world that like, so if you're,
Yeah.
a hard Bitcoiner, you say that US dollar is going to zero and everything else is going to zero faster, right? So if you're in any one of the many countries around the world that have horrible inflation or horrible monetary policy, like you'd love to save in US dollars. That's one of the super interesting
100%.
things about the whole stablecoin experiment is that there was a Euro Tether, and there's like been other like fiats, and even Tether Gold and the gold backed products. Like everybody just wanted US dollars, which is kind of an interesting thing, right? So the US dollar product was just massively, successful. I saw some interesting comments from Scaramucci, who I think is a really smart and interesting guy, and talking about like the Chinese having competing products. I just don't think anybody wants CNY. Nope, nope.
Yeah, I
Even
agree.
even people in China don't want CNY. Like if they can convert to US dollars, they convert to US dollars. And to prevent that, they've got massive capital controls, right? And if they didn't have those, it's just like India. If they didn't have those, all the money would flow out. So I don't think those are competing products at all. And people forget too that Tether got huge when interest rates were historically low, and it got huge, right? There was no yields to be had, and they
Yeah.
still got huge. So I think it's freedom.
Obviously, the Bitfinex team is very intertwined with the Tether team, but I got to go back to, and I brought this up a couple times in the pod, and maybe this is just me being naive or insert whatever naive like word you wish, but what Paolo and the team did with Tether, that could have been the only other currency it could have been is probably the euro. Maybe it could have been CNY, you never know, but definitely not CAD. I'll tell you that for free. But like the US government owes so much to Paolo and the team for making the global reserve stablecoin USDT. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
in hindsight, yes, looking back at it, okay, it makes most sense. USD is the reserve currency of the world. It makes most sense to denominate all crypto assets in that currency as well. But in a different world, like imagine how many more euros would have been printed, how much bigger the treasury would have gotten if we were marking every asset to euro instead of USD. It's not that far off. That's something I always think about, where I'm like, the US government is so friggin' lucky and owes so much to the crypto folks, because in years to come, Tether's going to have what, trillions in T-bills? Like, you know what I mean? Something I think about. Maybe I'm way off there, but I'd love to hear your 2 cents on that.
Well, I'd have to say it's pretty wild to see it happen. I don't think, me, like many other people, I didn't appreciate what was going to happen, how it was going to play out. I was really, I can remember I had an opportunity to meet the then CEO of Tether, Jail, and he's the CEO of Bitfinex Securities. And he gave me a card for Bitfinex and a card for Tether. This is like in 2016. And I was just, okay, I don't understand that. I just want to talk about the exchange business. And I didn't see it coming at all. So yeah, what do I know? Yeah.
It's crazy. Now it's one of the biggest companies in the world. I think second highest employee to revenue ratio in the world as well. Just a genuine money printer and making so many good investments too. So we love to see that. Okay, back to tokenization. We talked a lot about equities. I think equities right now is obviously very front of mind. Everyone's talking about it. Bankers are talking about it. My TradFi friends are calling me and asking me questions about it because they're sitting in meetings that they really don't know that much about, and they want a crypto guy's opinion on this. The next wave, I think, is going to be RWAs. Obviously, you could say that equities are RWAs in
Yeah.
some capacity. It is a real world asset, but I'm talking more, insurance bonds. I'm talking paintings. I'm talking Pokemon cards. I'm talking all these things, collectibles, you name it, that are now moving on chain as well. Do you think that's the second leg of this tokenization boom? Because everyone thought it was RWAs first, never really took off, at least in my opinion, besides gold, but I'd almost tie gold more into the equities kind of thing. But do you
Well,
think the RWA boom will rip the way that equities is currently ripping?
I've been at this long enough that I remember when it was called STOs, right? So we used to call it security token offerings, right? And then RWA became kind of big, I guess.
Really?
In the last 2 years, RWA kind of became
Wow.
the dominant kind of nomenclature for it. And I guess, I would say that STOs probably sit within RWAs. I guess RWA is kind of like a bigger, more inclusive term that captures more different kinds of assets. So yeah, commodities like gold and silver and, everything else, those kind of fit within that. Real estate fits in that. So it's just a huge groupings of asset classes. If you look at the way everything is positioned right now, the bulk of the assets out in the industry are fixed income products. So that's the really dominant one. It's the vast majority is fixed income. There really hasn't been that too much of the equities. So that's kind of the knock that we usually get. Like reporters will often ask the question, like, how is liquidity on the exchange? Because they know that liquidity is not good on the exchange. So they ask that question, right?
Of course.
And I think it's
Yeah.
because it's mostly buy and hold products. So we had like, the Blockstream mining note, which was like a tokenized hash rate contract. We've got a bunch of microfinancing bonds that are like, 11 months in duration. People just buy those and they hold them for the Blockstream mining note. They just bought them to get that 2000 terahash and just hold it, on the thesis that they're going to get more Bitcoin, or they just buy the 11-month bond and they wait 11 months. Nobody trades it. So I do think that'll be one of the themes for 2026 is that we'll get more tokenized equity, both private and public, and that will start, like, people trade equity. People go in and out. They have different views. They have different, pain points and all of that. And they like to ping it back and forth. And so I think that's what'll happen is I think we'll see more trading on the platforms this year because we'll see more equity come to the platforms. But at the same time, I think the bulk of the stuff that's being issued, like on the primary side, will probably still be fixed income products.
Interesting. Okay. Jesse, you're on a roll here. We got to take a quick break. Give a huge shout out to our sponsor of the show, Prime XPT. When we get back, we're going to keep buzzing on tokenization and deep dive into Bitfinex. Huge shout out to Prime XPT, longtime friends and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. We love the team at Prime XPT as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. Doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XPT is also running an exclusive promo for listeners of the Crypto News podcast. Use the promo code CryptoNews50, that's CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Now back to the show with Jesse. Okay, Bitfinex Securities. For the folks who don't know, and I feel like everyone who's been in the space for a long time definitely knows about it, give us the TLDR, the Coles notes, the elevator pitch, because you guys do a hell of a lot of things. But maybe if you just want to sort of touch on the tokenization part of it, balls in your court here, but give us the elevator pitch on Bitfinex Securities, and then we'll get into the fun stuff.
Yeah, like I said, it's the high level idea is very simple. To take the technology behind Bitcoin and digital assets and apply it to capital markets. So basically just looking to upgrade the infrastructure. Bitfinex Securities is the capital raise and trading platform for RWAs and tokenized securities within the Tether and the Bitfinex group of companies. So we can help companies list tokens, and we can help companies do capital raises to raise money for further issuances.
Gotcha. Nice and simple.
And we've done a number of different issuances. So like I said, we've been around since 2021. We've done tokenized bonds, tokenized hash rate contracts, tokenized T-bills and funds, a bunch of alternative assets like litigation finance, and we're looking to get our first equities on the platform here probably in the first quarter. In total, we've got about $250 million worth of assets. We're definitely starting to see things ramp up this quarter. There's obviously a big tailwind behind the industry, so I think we'll probably add another 100 million, I think, this quarter.
Wow.
And by the end of the quarter, be up around 350 million.
And for people who want to use this is everyone and anyone who just wants access to some really good tokenized, safe, secure, regulated products. Like you said, the fun stuff like the hash rate. You talked about the litigation bonds. That seems really cool as well. I didn't know about those. And then you said some equities coming on chain as well.
Yep.
Anyone can use this kind of thing?
Well, not if you're Canadian. So
yeah. So that is true.
We've got a prohibited persons and jurisdictions list. So, we're not DeFi, we're centralized finance. I do think I talked to Carlos Domingo from Securitize last week, and he agreed as well that it's really difficult to decentralized securities, right? Like you have to have a regulator, you have to know who's on the cap table. You can't have assets convert into bearer assets. Regulators do not like bearer securities. So you kind of need to know who owns what, and then you also need to who knows what to do the distribution of dividends and things like that. So we are probably, more CeFi than I guess a lot of the other kind of stuff in the crypto world. And we do have a list of prohibited persons and jurisdictions, and the list starts with the US, Canadian residents, but most of the world,
classic.
Yeah, sorry, write a letter to your MP. Or come move to Taiwan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So unless you're Canadian or American, pretty much it's a green light to go jump on Bitfinex. And like you talked about with the emerging economies, I feel like this is so big because unfortunately a lot of the time they have fewer really good opportunities in equities or just investing opportunities as a whole. And then on top of that, you have to couple the fact that their currencies a lot of the time get devalued at just an absurd pace. I always use my girlfriend who's Argentinian. Even if you invested in some of the great Argentinian companies in 2020, I mean, the currency, I think, went down 800% it was, or excuse me, inflated by 800% in 5 years,
Yeah.
something like that. It may have even been in the thousands. So even if you hit the pico bottom of that company, rode it up to the top, you're still getting absolutely wrecked because the currency is now mierda, as they call it. So there's nothing you can do about it. And I feel like that's really where part of the bread and butter is for Bitfinex, giving opportunities to people who don't have Canadian stock markets and American stock markets like our neighbors to the south.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think inclusion and financial access. I mean, it sounds kind of buzzwordy, and banking the unbanked is
Yeah.
like the biggest cliche within financial technology. But you know, but this time it's true. But but I think it really does apply here, right? Because what we've seen is that there's still businesses that need to raise money in these places. The banks just aren't lending. The cost of capital is super high. So if people have good ideas, there are global investors that want to kind of bridge that gap and provide people with financing. And you just need to have like kind of a regulated ecosystem where people can go ahead and do that and feel like they're not going to get torched for making these investments. And on the other side, it's like you said, there's just a lot of friction points, right? So you mentioned the foreign exchange, the FX is a big friction point, right? Because of the inflation, the banks aren't often not stable. So there's blow ups there when people lose their savings. So people are also looking for like high quality kind of investment products as well. And I think that, just as Tether was a better option to like the domestic currency that they had, I think that we'll be able to offer better options for securities and places to like put and save and grow their capital.
Yeah, well said. Any other Bitfinex news? I want to. We'll move on to just overall market. A lot of wild shit's happening right now. But any other Bitfinex news to drop as this episode will air in 2 days, Jesse, on Thursday the 22nd.
I'm not sure. I mean, we've got the El Salvador Plan B conference coming up, which I think is a really cool conference. So we'll be going over Bitfinex Securities. We'll be over there. We're having an event over there talking about tokenization. There'll be a lot of people over there, so I'm sure there'll probably be some announcements around that. That's at the end of the month on the 30th and the 31st. It's going to be a big event this year. I heard it's going to be more than 4,000 people. So it's grown and become quite a large event.
That's incredible. Wow. I love that. I might even look into that. Maybe I'll get out of the cold and
You should
pop
come
down. I'll
down.
see you
Yeah,
there
for
if you're going
sure.
to be there. Yeah, that we might have to make that
It's
happen.
not a bad flight from Toronto, I think.
No, it's probably 5 hours, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
6 hours. Yeah, it's not,
yeah.
it's
It's a
not too
long
far
flight
at
from
all.
Taiwan, but yeah.
Yeah, and probably no direct either, unless you're taking a
No, no, no,
PJ.
no, no.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, no,
yeah.
no, no, no.
Couple stops along the way.
Yeah.
Overall crypto market, we're in a bit of a weird spot right now. Everyone is saying that Q1, or at least a lot of people on my timeline and people I respect, were saying Q1 should be a good quarter. Things are looking good. We keep getting hammered. Crypto has almost completely decoupled from TradFi and gold now.
In a
We
bad
want
way. Yeah.
in a bad way. But there was a time where it was in a good way.
Yep.
We are now inverse of gold. Gold rips and Bitcoin gets wrecked, which is super weird. Is this going to turn around in your eyes, or are we just sort of in our own waters and in our own land moving forward?
Yeah, I think the big question is, are the 4-year cycles kind of over, or will they be more muted, or has that changed? And I've,
Yeah,
talked to enough people. I did
yeah,
a podcast as well and interviewed Paulo, and I think his thoughts were that the 4-year cycles would have less of an impact now than they've had in the past. I think that seems to be the consensus of most people I've talked to, and I think that probably makes sense. What's dominating now is the inflows from the ETFs, things like that. We've got more treasury companies. Sailor, I saw, just bought a ton of Bitcoin again. So I think those kind of things should be supportive or positive for price. So I think it's probably unlikely, knock on wood, that we have those big drops that we've had at the end of cycles in previous years. We're also coming into, a change in interest rate policy, which should be supportive of Bitcoin and crypto assets. And then, yeah, I think you'll probably see some mean reversion, right? You'll see some money come out of gold and come back into Bitcoin. That's just how it works. I remember in
yeah.
like 2021, there was a great article from JP Morgan. They had an article of, it was called, what did they say? Gold will make Bitcoin suffer. No, Bitcoin will make gold suffer for years. So, and I guess now we're at the inverse of that. So, time for some mean reversion, but probably in some of that money to flow back into Bitcoin and crypto markets.
Well said. I think an underlooked part of investing present day, Jesse, is just how vicious capital rotation is.
Yep.
I feel like humans' attention spans have just gone obsolete. Our dopamine receptors are at all-time highs and we need to hit them all the time. And the traditional, like, oh, this year it's going to be this narrative. This year, and it's literally like 3-month or 6-month narratives now. It was crypto. We rolled that into AI infra build out. We rolled it into precious metals. We're rolling it. It's probably still precious metals with a bit of AI build out. What's next? The flip could be switched at any second, and we could have an insane influx of capital being rotated into crypto because everyone's just chasing this quick rip. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm out to lunch there, but I just think capital rotation is at an all-time high for viciousness.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I think it's always about fund flows, right? Just watching where the money's going and when it reverts. So I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think we're kind of, I mean, would you bet that Bitcoin goes higher from here or that gold gets higher? I'm not sure. I think to me it makes sense that some money will come out of gold and go towards Bitcoin.
Yeah, well said. Jesse, this was an absolute banger. Really appreciate you coming on. Any other things that are front of mind for you, trendy, talking about? I'm sure you've seen this AI shit going on with Claude. My whole Twitter timeline it's barely even crypto anymore. I missed that. I actually got to go to my lists. Unfortunately, I literally have lists for, different parts of crypto. I have to go on those because my main feed is all just, oh, I'm vibe coding this app that is a piece of dog. You know what? It's for me. I mean, I've used them. I think they're incredible. I think they will be the future. They're changing these sort of, white collar jobs forever.
Yeah.
But I miss the good old days of crypto Twitter. Is there anything front of mind for you that you'd love to discuss? Give us some knowledge bombs before we let you go today.
Yeah, I don't know. One thing that came to mind that I didn't have a chance to talk about when you mentioned, that the NYSE would be on Chainlink or maybe other technologies as well. I didn't want to mention that you can do a lot of this stuff on Bitcoin. So we've done all of our issuances so far, $250 million on the Liquid network, which is developed by Blockstream, but it's a layer 2 of Bitcoin that lets you do all of this stuff. So I think that does kind of get overlooked a little bit. I find particularly in North America, it gets overlooked, but yeah, a lot of this, Bitcoin can do this as well. I find there's a lot of Bitcoin bulls that, also look to Solana or Ethereum because they're bullish on the tokenized asset thing. But I think you can, do that on Bitcoin as well, which I think is interesting.
Interesting. Okay. I got to do more research on that. And you said that was the Liquid network.
Yep.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. I mean, it's got some cool functionalities like, it's confidential transactions. So by default, you can't see what the transaction is on like a blockchain explorer or, what the size is.
That's huge.
So I think that's a big one. And then it's got this whitelisting functionality. I really think that that's the key thing to making this sustainable. And that's kind of how we get around that challenge we mentioned with the NYSE where, you need to have, for it to be a token, you need to have the tokens come off the platform. And how do you do that? Well, you need everybody to get on a whitelist. And once you're on the whitelist, then it's just a low friction experience like Bitcoin. I can send it to you. We can do peer-to-peer trading. We can do whatever because it's all kind of within this whitelisted ecosystem. And it feels like Bitcoin or Tether, but still, you know who's on the cap table and all of that. So you can meet your KYC and all your regulatory obligations. So I think that's how you get there.
I love it. Jeez. That's one thing that I'd say that I definitely need to level up. My knowledge is weak in that sense, is the actual building on Bitcoin aspect. For the points you said as well, there's so many other chains that I feel like it's more front of mind. And you're right, North America, it really doesn't get a whole lot of media coverage. And that's something I got to do. But either way, Jesse, great epi. You made my head spin in a bunch of really good ways. And big fan of you and the team. Of course, had Paolo on a bunch of times as well. You guys are some of the goats in crypto, and we appreciate all the incredible work you've done. Before you go today, please let our listeners know where they can find you personally and, of course, Bitfinex Securities online and on socials.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, but yeah, go check out Bitfinex Securities on Twitter and socials. You can find us and we post a lot of stuff there. We've got research reports and we've got, update on our events and new stuff that we're doing around securities and that. So yeah, take a look.
Love it. Folks, what an episode with Jesse Knutson, head of ops at Bitfinex Securities, one of the best companies in this space. Huge shout out to Jesse and the team for making this happen. If you guys enjoyed this one, I hope you did. Please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking to the team, love you guys. Thank you so much for everything. Jeg, you're doing a great job. Keep on crushing it. And back to the listeners, really appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Thanks for tuning in as always, and keep on growing those bags and staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Love you guys. We'll see you on the next one. Ciao.